You ever watch the news and just get this feeling in your gut that you're not seeing the whole picture? We're all so caught up in our own lives, our jobs, our families, while somewhere decisions are being made that change everything for us. We call it politics and just kind of assume it's this impossibly complicated thing. But what if I told you it's all a game and that the rule book was written down 2,300 years ago?
Yeah, that's what we're digging into today. We're talking about Aristotle's Politics. And I know what you might be thinking. Some dusty old book, right? But no. I want you to think of this as a secret blueprint, a master key that shows you how power and control really work. And I promise you, once you grasp this, you will never look at a politician or a news headline the same way again. Ever.
So let's start with the most basic question there is. Why do we even have governments? Why do we need all these rules and systems? I mean, why can't we all just be left alone to do our own thing? It's a simple question, but the answer gets to the very core of what Aristotle believed it means to be human. Okay, so Aristotle's big idea is this. He called human beings political animals. Now, that doesn't mean we all want to run for office, thank goodness. What it really means is that we are hardwired to be social. We literally can't thrive by ourselves. It's just not in our nature. We're built to form communities, to work together, because life is just better that way. And that's the natural progression, right? It starts with a family, then a village, and boom, you get a state. And he just puts it so perfectly with this quote. See, for Aristotle, the whole point of the state isn't just about survival. It's not just about not getting eaten by a bear. It's about creating the conditions for us to live a good life, a meaningful one. This whole system, this thing called politics, is what allows us to truly flourish and be more than just animals. So where does it all begin? According to Aristotle, it starts right at home, the family. He saw it as a mini-state, the very first government you ever know. And if you think about it, it makes perfect sense, right? It has a leader, it has rules, it has its own little economy. It's basically the first training ground where we learn about authority and responsibility for both future citizens and future rulers. Now, hold on, because Aristotle's idea of a citizen is probably not what you think. For him, you weren't a citizen just because you were born somewhere. Nope. A true citizen was someone who was actively in the driver's seat, participating in governing and in the justice system. Think of it like a giant corporation. There might be thousands of employees, but who's really calling the shots? The handful of people on the board of directors. For Aristotle, only those board members are the real citizens. Okay, so we've got a state, and we know who the real citizens are. The next logical question is, who's in charge? And how many different ways are there to run a country, really? This is where Aristotle's genius for breaking things down really shines. So get this, Aristotle didn't just guess, he did the homework. He studied over 150 different constitutions from his time. And from all that research, he boiled everything down to a brilliantly simple two-question test. First, who rules? Is it one person, a few people, or many people? And second, and this is the absolute key, why are they ruling? Is it for the good of everyone, or is it just for their own selfish gain? And those two simple questions give you this elegant chart. You've got the three good forms, monarchy, where one person rules for all, aristocracy, where a few excellent people rule for all, and polity, where the many rule for all. But look at the other side, the corrupt forms. The only thing that changes is the motive. When that good king starts ruling only for himself, he becomes a tyrant. When that elite group rules for their own class, it's an oligarchy. And when the many rule just for themselves, he called that democracy.
Whoa, wait a minute. Democracy is corrupt? Yes, you saw that right. And for us today, that sounds absolutely insane. This is probably the biggest shocker in the whole book. But you have to understand, for Aristotle, democracy wasn't about the rule of law we think of. It was mob rule. It was the poor using their superior numbers to make emotional decisions that benefited them at the expense of everyone else without any regard for the state as a whole.
And that conflict between the rich and the poor, well, that brings us to what Aristotle saw as the one great, unavoidable conflict that is always simmering just beneath the surface of every single society.
This is it. The story as old as time itself. The timeless battle between the rich and the poor. The wealthy believe they should be in charge because of their money and influence. The poor believe they should be in charge because there are just so many more of them. And according to Aristotle, this constant tug of war is the engine that drives politics. It's the root cause of almost every revolution and all political instability.
So, if this giant fight between the rich and poor is basically inevitable, what's the solution? Is society just doomed to tear itself apart? How do you actually build a state that's stable and built to last? His answer was pure genius. The secret ingredient? A large and powerful middle class. He saw them as the ultimate stabilizer, the glue that holds the whole thing together. Why? Well, think about it. They're not so rich that they become arrogant and feel above the law, but they're not so poor that they're desperate and want to burn everything down. They have something to lose, so they respect law and order. They are, quite literally, the bedrock of stability. And this leads us to Aristotle's ideal practical government. Not some fantasy, but something that could actually work. He called it a polity. And it's basically a clever mix. It takes some elements from oligarchy, the rule of the rich, and some from democracy, the rule of the poor, but it puts the real power right in the hands of that strong middle class. It's his golden mean, the sweet spot that prevents the extremes from taking over. But what happens when that balance fails? What if it all falls apart and a tyrant, a dictator, seizes control? How does a person like that hold on to power when their entire rule is unjust? Oh yeah? Aristotle had a playbook for that too. He basically wrote the tyrant's playbook. Two main strategies. The first one is obvious: rule by fear. You crush your opponents, you sow division among the people so they can never unite against you. But the more cunning tyrant uses the second path: deception. They put on a show. They pretend to be a religious and just ruler. They make a big public spectacle of spending money on grand projects, all while hiding their cruelty behind the scenes to keep up the image of a hero. Okay, so we've been deep in the mechanics of how governments work and how they fall apart. Let's zoom all the way out. What is all of this for? What is the ultimate goal of having a stable political system in the first place? And this might be the most beautiful part of his entire philosophy. For Aristotle, the point of a stable state isn't just survival or managing an economy. That's just the baseline. The real goal is to create the conditions that allow citizens to pursue a higher purpose, to live the good life, a life that's about more than just working to stay alive. And the key to this good life is leisure. Now, when we hear that word, we think of laziness, right? Binge watching shows. That's not what he meant. For Aristotle, leisure was the time you have free from the basic struggle of work, and it was meant to be used actively for self-improvement, for art, for philosophy, for expanding your mind. That, he believed, is what truly makes us civilized humans. So, this brings us to the final and maybe the most important question of all. If the goal is to have citizens who can use their freedom for this higher purpose, how on earth does a state create those kinds of people? Aristotle's answer here is fascinating. He points to two main tools. The first one is obvious: education. You have to teach children the values of the state from a young age so they grow up to believe in it. But the second tool? You're not going to see this one coming. It's music. No, I'm not kidding. Music. Aristotle believed music has a direct, powerful effect on the soul. He thought different kinds of melodies and rhythms literally shape your character. So for him, teaching children the right kind of music, music that inspires courage, moderation, and justice, wasn't just an artistic choice. It was a political necessity for building a strong society. And that's how this 2,300-year-old blueprint lands right in our laps today. It forces us to ask a huge question about our own world. What is the purpose of our education, our culture, our music? Is it creating citizens who are capable of thinking for themselves and living a good life? Or is it just creating efficient workers and obedient subjects? The answer to that question tells you everything about the true nature of the state we live in.